10,000 meters below the surface of the sea, off the coast of Japan, divers found stone steps that shouldn't exist. Straight edges. Right angles. A staircase, cut into rock, sitting on the ocean floor, in a place no human being should have been able to build anything. Not 10,000 years ago. Not 12,000. According to everything we were taught, there were no cities then. No tools sharp enough. No civilization capable of cutting stone like this. And yet, here it is. For 200 years, the story of human civilization has had a start date. A first chapter. Sumer, Egypt. The Indus Valley, roughly 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, give or take. Before that, hunter-gatherers. Scattered bands with stone tools, chasing herds, with no cities, no writing, no monuments. That's the story in every textbook. But in the last few decades, a pile of evidence has been quietly stacking up in the margins of archaeology, evidence that doesn't fit that story. Structures older than they should be. Timelines that don't add up. And a growing number of researchers, not fringe cranks, but working scientists, asking the same uncomfortable question: what if we weren't the first civilization to build something here? What if something came before us, and we're only now finding the wreckage? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to look at 3 ordinary places on a map completely differently. Here's what everyone believed for basically the entire history of modern archaeology. Human civilization has an origin point. Around 6,000 years ago, some researchers push it a little earlier, to about 10,000 to 12,000 years, humans in the Fertile Crescent transitioned from small nomadic groups into the first proto-cities. Agriculture came first. Farming meant food surplus. Food surplus meant people could stop moving, settle down, specialize into roles: builders, priests, soldiers, scribes. That specialization is what let us build the first real monuments and, eventually, writing. It's a clean story. A tidy staircase of human progress. But in 1994, that staircase got a very inconvenient interruption. In southeastern Turkey, archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating a hill called Göbekli Tepe. What he found were massive carved limestone pillars, some over 5 meters tall, weighing many tons, arranged in circular enclosures, decorated with detailed carvings of animals: foxes, scorpions, vultures, boars. Radiocarbon dating placed the site at roughly 11,600 years old. That's before agriculture, before farming. Before the settle down first, build later order of operations the textbooks described. Which means either hunter-gatherers, supposedly too busy surviving to build anything, organized enough labor, enough planning, enough architectural knowledge to quarry, carve, transport, and erect multi-ton stone pillars in complex arrangements. Or the timeline we'd been taught was wrong from the start. Schmidt himself called it a discovery that would change everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. And that's not a fringe YouTuber talking, that's the archaeologist who dug it up. So here's the real question this video is going to sit with. If Göbekli Tepe is real, and it is, it's UNESCO listed, it's not disputed, then the starting line of civilization just moved backward by thousands of years. And once you move the starting line once, what else moves with it? Because Göbekli Tepe isn't the only site that doesn't fit the old timeline. There are others. Some are accepted by mainstream archaeology and are simply astonishing. Others sit right on the edge of the debate, championed by some researchers, dismissed by others. We're going to walk through both kinds, honestly, so you can judge the evidence yourself. Let's start with the ice. Around 12,900 years ago, something happened to the planet's climate that scientists still argue about the cause of. The Earth had been warming steadily out of the last ice age. Then, abruptly, over the course of maybe a decade, which is almost instantaneous in geological terms, the northern hemisphere plunged back into near-glacial cold. This period is called the Younger Dryas, and it lasted for roughly 1,200 years before the climate snapped back to warming again. Mainstream science has multiple competing explanations for what triggered it. A massive meltwater pulse from collapsing ice sheets disrupting ocean currents is the leading theory. But a smaller, more controversial group of researchers has proposed something more dramatic: the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, the idea that a fragmented comet or asteroid struck the ice sheets over North America, triggering catastrophic flooding, wildfires, and the sudden cooling. This hypothesis is genuinely contested. Some geologists point to evidence like nanodiamonds and platinum spikes in the sediment layer from that period as potential impact markers. Other researchers have re-examined that same evidence and found it inconclusive, or explainable by other processes. This is not settled science. It's an active, ongoing scientific argument, and you should know that going in. But here's why it matters for our question: if a global cataclysm, of any cause, struck right at the end of the Ice Age, that's exactly the kind of event that could erase almost all physical evidence of an earlier human society. Coastlines flooded. Landscapes buried. Settlements submerged. And that's not speculation, that part is just geography. During the last ice age, sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower than they are today, because so much of the planet's water was locked into glaciers. That means enormous areas of land that were once above water, where any coastal society would have logically settled, because coastlines are where humans have always settled, are now sitting on the ocean floor. We're not looking for a lost civilization on land. If it existed, we may be looking for it underwater. And that brings us to a stretch of ocean off the coast of a small Japanese island, where something was found that even skeptical geologists can't fully agree on. In 1986, a diver exploring the waters near Yonaguni Island, Japan, came across a massive rock formation roughly 25 meters below the surface. It has flat terraces, sharp 90-degree edges, what looks like a staircase, and what some have described as a road. It looks, to the eye, like a step pyramid or a ceremonial platform. And this is where the debate gets genuinely split, not manufactured drama for the video, an actual disagreement between credentialed scientists. Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist who has studied the site extensively, argues it shows clear signs of human modification, cut marks, right angles too consistent to be natural, and features he interprets as steps and pathways. He has proposed the structure could be over 10,000 years old, which, if it's man-made, would place it in the same startling window as Göbekli Tepe, from a completely different culture on the opposite side of the world. On the other side, most geologists who've examined Yonaguni, including many outside Japan, argue the formation is a striking, but entirely natural, sandstone formation. This region's sandstone is known to fracture along straight, geometric planes due to its layered composition, the same reason Giant's Causeway-style rock formations exist elsewhere in the world without any human involvement. So we have two credentialed geologists looking at the exact same rock and reaching opposite conclusions. That's not us being lazy with the research, that's genuinely where the science currently sits. What we can say for certain, whatever Yonaguni is, it sits in water that would have been dry land during the last ice age. Whether it's a monument or a coincidence of geology, it sits exactly where a coastal ice age settlement would have logically existed. And Yonaguni isn't alone. Because half a world away, in the Mediterranean, there's a much stranger anomaly, one that isn't even underwater, and isn't in dispute at all. It's just impossible to explain with the tools its makers were supposed to have. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera recovered a shipwreck dated to roughly the 1st century BCE. Among the wreckage was a corroded lump of bronze that sat in a museum drawer for decades before anyone realized what it actually was. It's an analog computer. Using X-ray and CT scanning technology, researchers eventually mapped over 30 interlocking bronze gears inside the device, a mechanism capable of predicting the positions of the sun, moon, and planets, tracking the lunar calendar, and even predicting eclipses. Some analyses suggest it could account for the moon's elliptical orbit, a level of astronomical sophistication historians didn't think existed for another 1000+ years. This is not a fringe claim. This is published, peer-reviewed research from institutions including UCL, and the mechanism is on display at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens right now. You can go see it. And here's the part that should stop you. Nothing else like it has ever been found from that era. No simpler, earlier prototype. No later, more advanced descendant, until clockwork mechanisms of similar complexity reappear in Europe over 1,000 years later. Which means one of two things is true. Either this was a complete one-off invention with no lineage, which is historically unusual, since technology almost always evolves in visible steps, or it was the product of a body of engineering knowledge that mostly didn't survive. A tradition that existed, was used, and then was lost, through war, fire, the collapse of the institutions that held it, or simply time. Historians actually have documented cases of exactly this kind of loss. The Library of Alexandria is the most famous example, an enormous repository of ancient knowledge that was destroyed, gradually, over centuries of conflict, fire, and neglect. We know entire categories of ancient texts existed, referenced by other writers, that simply don't exist anymore. We know the names of lost plays, lost scientific treatises, lost historical records. The knowledge existed. It's the evidence of it that vanished. So if a single shipwreck can preserve evidence of an engineering tradition advanced enough to shock modern historians, a tradition otherwise completely erased from the historical record, it raises the obvious question. What else got erased? And how far back could it go? This next one isn't disputed at all. It's simply not well known. Between Britain and continental Europe, where the North Sea sits today, there used to be land. A huge, low-lying region archaeologists now call Doggerland. At its peak, during the last ice age, it may have connected Britain to mainland Europe entirely. We know people lived there. Fishing trawlers have pulled up mammoth tusks, ancient tools, and human remains from the seabed for over a century. In 1931, a trawler even hauled up a barbed antler point, a hunting tool, from a chunk of peat dredged from the North Sea floor. As sea levels rose after the Ice Age, Doggerland flooded gradually over thousands of years, and then, according to genuinely accepted geological evidence, a catastrophic event may have finished the job, the Storegga Slide, a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway roughly 8,200 years ago, which is believed to have triggered a tsunami that would have devastated whatever remained of Doggerland's coastal settlements. An entire inhabited landscape, swallowed by the sea, first slowly, then all at once. This matters because it's proof of concept for everything we've discussed. We are not speculating that ancient coastal societies could be erased by rising water. We know, for a documented fact, that at least one was. Doggerland isn't a myth or a fringe theory, it's mainstream, funded, peer-reviewed marine archaeology, and researchers are actively mapping the submerged landscape today using seismic survey data from oil and gas exploration. If an entire inhabited landmass can vanish beneath the North Sea and only be rediscovered by chance through fishing nets and oil surveys, how many other Doggerlands are still down there, unmapped, in oceans we've barely surveyed? Let's be honest about what we're not claiming. We're not saying there was a global, technologically advanced super-civilization with power grids and skyscrapers hiding somewhere under the ice. That version of the theory, the one that shows up in a lot of viral thumbnails, isn't supported by any credible evidence, and this video isn't going to pretend otherwise. What the actual evidence supports is more grounded, and honestly more interesting, that our picture of the beginning of human civilization is probably incomplete. That organized building, monument construction, and possibly advanced knowledge existed earlier and more widely than the traditional timeline assumed, and that a combination of rising seas, catastrophic climate shifts, and simple time has erased most of the physical proof, for unconnected pieces of evidence. For different fields of science, archaeology, marine geology, mechanical engineering, and oceanography. None of them, on their own, prove a lost civilization in the dramatic sense. But together, they prove something almost as important, that the story of human history we were taught has an ending we assumed too early, and a beginning we probably got wrong. Hard proof number 1, Göbekli Tepe's dating is not disputed. Radiocarbon dating on organic material at the site consistently returns dates around 9,600 BCE, making it roughly 11,600 years old. This is accepted by mainstream archaeology worldwide, verified through multiple independent dating methods, and the site is UNESCO World Heritage listed. This alone already moves the start of complex human construction back thousands of years earlier than the pre-1994 consensus. Hard proof number 2, sea level change during the last ice age is measured, not theorized. Ice core data, coral reef dating, and sediment cores all independently confirm sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower during the last glacial maximum, around 20,000 years ago. This is basic, settled climate science, not a fringe claim. It means enormous areas of coastline, exactly where ancient humans would have settled, are now underwater and largely unexplored archaeologically. Hard proof number 3, the Antikythera Mechanism's complexity is documented through direct imaging. High-resolution X-ray CT scans by the International Antikythera Mechanism Research Project mapped the internal gear structure precisely. This isn't an interpretation of vague markings, it's a physical, measurable object with over 30 gears, on public display, studied by multiple independent research teams who reached compatible conclusions about its function. So why isn't this widely known? This is worth addressing directly, because it's the obvious question. It's not a hidden conspiracy, it's mostly a funding and attention problem. Underwater archaeology is extraordinarily expensive and technically difficult compared to digging on land. Sites like Doggerland require specialized sonar surveys, often piggybacked onto oil and gas exploration data rather than dedicated archaeological funding. And genuinely disputed sites like Yonaguni get caught in a media environment where sensational, ancient aliens, framing crowds out the more careful, slower work of actual marine geologists trying to publish nuanced findings. The scientific institution isn't hiding this. It's underfunded, slow, and competing with louder, less careful voices for public attention, which is a real problem, just a much more boring one than a cover-up. Where the actual scientific debate still stands, honestly, mainstream archaeology broadly accepts Göbekli Tepe's implications, that organized construction predates agriculture. It does not broadly accept the more dramatic, advanced lost global civilization version of this theory, and prominent archaeologists have publicly pushed back on researchers like Graham Hancock for overstating the evidence in that direction. That pushback is legitimate and worth taking seriously. This is a live, ongoing debate between credentialed people, not settled fact on either side. So, where does that leave us? We know, for a fact, that the civilization began 6,000 years ago story was already wrong before Göbekli Tepe forced a correction. We know that roughly 120 meters of coastline, exactly the kind of land ancient humans would have chosen to settle, is sitting underwater, mostly unexplored. We know at least one inhabited landmass, Doggerland, was completely swallowed by the sea within human memory of the people who lived on it. And we know that even highly advanced knowledge, like the engineering behind the Antikythera Mechanism, can be created, used, and then almost completely erased from history. None of that proves a hidden global empire. But all of it proves the same thing: the further back we look, the less confident we should be that we've found the beginning. If Göbekli Tepe moved the timeline back by thousands of years once already, what happens the next time someone finds something like it, sitting quietly under 120 meters of water we haven't fully explored yet? That's not a comfortable question, but it might be the right one. If this kind of deep dive into the evidence, not the hype, the actual evidence, is what you come to this channel for, the best thing you can do is hit subscribe, because there's a lot more of this coming, and I don't want you to miss the next one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.